Welcome back to the Urban Monk. I'm here to talk about skin today, and very specifically, natural ways to deal with skin problems. With me today is Shann Nix Jones, who has a very interesting story. She works with Welsh goats, and we're talking about kefir and the benefits of kefir and other forms of dairy, and say goat dairy, to treat skin conditions. For me, this is fascinating because anything that could move away from the chemicals is interesting to me. Welcome to the show.
It's lovely to be here.
Well, so how did you get into hanging out with goats to realize that they had this effect on skin with their milk?
It was a strange career path. I never expected to find myself here, for sure. I started out in San Francisco. I was a journalist and a talk show host. And then I came to Wales, and when I was 41 years old, I met a goat farmer named Rich. And it was a little bit of a Crocodile Dundee story. You know, I was this city girl who couldn't boil an egg, and he was this mad Welsh farmer. He's he can build a barn with his bare hands. He makes his own hay. He fixes his own tractors, made his own beer, made his own bread, made his own cheese out here in the wilds of Wales. We fell in love, and he asked me to marry him and come to live on his farm, which is a very beautiful farm, hills sloping down to the Irish Sea. I brought my two kids, and we moved in with his two kids and his 70-year-old father and his daughter's boyfriend. And so all of a sudden, I was the farmer's wife in this sustainable Welsh farm, and I was cooking dinner for 10 people. And they would look at me and go, "What's for food?" And I was like, I don't know, let's go out to the restaurant. And they said, "No, there's no restaurant. It's an hour to get to the nearest restaurant." So I had to
figure it out.
Figure it out in a hurry. So that's how I came to the farm. We got our first goat when my little boy Benji started having horrible bronchial infections. And if you've got kids, you know the story. Get a cold, settles on the chest, go to the doctor, get antibiotics. And then he gets sick again, and sick again, and sick again. I know the reason why that happens now, but I asked Rich what he thought we should do about it, because I thought Benji's way too little to be having this many antibiotics. And Rich said, "Let's get a goat." I went, okay, I just told you my son is sick, and you said we need to get a goat. Turns out that inside the Welsh tradition, which of course is ancient, goes all the way back to Merlin, there is actually knowledge that says that goat's milk is good for bronchial infections, good for asthma, and good for eczema. So I said, fine, let's get a goat. We got a goat, started milking the goat, gave the goat's milk to Benji, and we put away his inhaler. The bronchial infection stopped. So that was how we got our first goat.
Wow. So what is it about goat's milk? Are we talking about the probiotics that are found specifically there versus cows and other animals? Is there something else in goat's milk? What do we got?
Goat's milk is superior to cow's milk in almost every way. It is considered by scientists to be a functional food because of all of the bioavailable minerals, vitamins, etc. What goat's milk doesn't have, that cow's milk does have, is something called alpha-1 casein, and that's the protein that is so very allergenic for human beings. So they reckon now that about 60% of adults actually have a cow's milk allergy that they don't realize. And the number one symptom is eczema. People have no idea. They're walking around having cow's milk in everything, and they could be allergic to it all the while.
Yep. I mean, personally, I ended up shifting to goat's milk years back, and it just made a world of difference. I didn't realize that I had a dairy issue until I stopped taking cow dairy, and then, just a night and day difference for me and hundreds of my patients.
Mm-hmm. Good for you. So yeah, anybody who has rhinitis, allergies, IBS, any kind of skin condition, the first thing they need to do is get rid of all the cow dairy in their diet. And as I'm sure you found out, goat dairy is lovely. You can have goat butter, you can have goat cheese, goat's milk is fantastic. So there are a lot of options out there.
Yeah. Some of the problems I've had with some of the goat's cheeses out here in the States, at least, is you'll go and try to get goat's cheese or sheep's cheese, and I'll ask you what your opinion of sheep milk and sheep cheese is, but then they'll always start it with some sort of cow dairy starter, or there'll be some sort of like trace element of cow milk in there, and you're like, what the hell did you do this for? I came here for goat cheese.
Right. I think people just mix cow dairy into everything. I think it's a problem because obviously if you're allergic to it, you don't want any traces of it. Interesting about the cheese question. What happened to us is that we had so much goat's milk suddenly, I didn't know what to do with it. And it was going off in my fridge. And so I thought, what should I do? Should I make cheese? And I didn't really want to make cheese because there's so much beautiful goat cheese out there. You know, the French have it nailed. People make great goat cheese. So I thought that was a little boring. So I heard on the radio this Russian doctor talking about something called kefir. Now, I had heard of kefir, you know, in California, of course, we have a lot of kefir, but it wasn't big in the UK. And this particular doctor, her name is Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, very brilliant Russian doctor. She was using this kefir to treat patients with autism, ADHD, schizophrenia, and dyspraxia, and it was working. So I thought, right, this sounds interesting. We could make kefir with our leftover goat's milk. And I got in touch with Dr. McBride, asked her how to make the real stuff, you know, the serious stuff that she was giving to her patients. And turns out you make kefir if you're serious about it. It's not flavored and it doesn't taste particularly great. You don't put any sugar in it because that kills the probiotics. You use real kefir grains. So I don't know how familiar you are with kefir and kefir grains, but kefir grains are this funny-looking little squishy constellation of bacteria and yeast. Almost looks like a little cauliflower. And these kefir grains are living organisms. It's really strange. If you've made kombucha, it's a little bit like a SCOBY. So they live and they divide and they multiply, and they'll keep living as long as you do if you treat them right. Kefir comes out of the Black Caucasus Mountains in Russia. And way back when, the Russian government figured out that all these Bulgarian peasants would be really, really old because they were drinking this fermented milk drink. And so the Russian government went in and seized some of the grains and brought them out under armed guard. And that's where the kefir grains came from. Ultimately, it's a mystery where the first kefir grain came from because you can't manufacture it. Nobody knows. It's just one of those amazing things. But you put these little squishy things in milk, preferably goat's milk, ferment it, and it turns into this incredibly powerful probiotic. So we started making this probiotic and we started selling it, and we developed a little farmyard business right there in our kitchen.
Good for you. So Natasha McBride, a big fan of her work, gut and psychology syndrome. She's actually been very instrumental in that space. She's in the UK, right? She's Russian, but she last I checked, she was in the UK. Has she kind of gone back and forth?
No, she's in the UK. Yeah, and we're in constant communication with her. And she now, I'm proud to say, has her own goats.
Nice.
we had big conversations about it. And she said, "Ooh, should I get my own goats?" I said, "Yes, you'll never go back. They're wonderful animals." So yeah, she has her own goats now.
Great. So this this ancient lineage of this kefir, are we reasonably sure that what we're having today, because the cultures have survived and lived, haven't really adapted? So this is an ancient strain that has basically been preserved by the Russian government from the Caucasus Mountains, and it really hasn't changed or adapted over all this time?
That's a great question, and I had the same question. So we started working with a university close to us. There's a very brilliant scientist here, Jamie Newbold, who's been doing work on the gut before the gut was cool. For 20 years, he's been at the forefront of this research. So we hooked up with him, gave him some of our kefir and said, "Hey, test this, pull it apart, see what you can find out." The greatest gift in the world, he genetic strained our kefir. It's hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of research. We didn't have any money. We could never have afforded that. We're not deep pockets at all. But he did that work for us, so we know exactly what's in our kefir. The real powerful thing there is lactobacillus. So lactobacillus is the good bacteria. There's a lot of bacteria in there. You know, there's lots of different strains of yeast and bacteria. Kefir has 2 different strains of lactobacillus, and that's the real powerhouse of the probiotic that you want.
Okay, so you're taking this starter, right? This lactobacillus / other bacteria cocktail starter, taking your goat's milk and then creating a kefir, which is kind of like a yogurt-like drink, and then taking it orally, or is there some sort of topical application for skin as well?
Now there's the question. So back to my story. We were on the farm, we were making this kefir, selling a little bit of it. You know, it doesn't taste very good, and people didn't know what it was, so it was a bit of a hard sell. But we were having a good time on the farm. Then suddenly my husband was stricken down with colitis. Now, he had colitis before, he'd had it for a long time, but he suddenly went into, you know, a bad flare-up. He went into the hospital. While he was in the hospital, they removed his large intestine, his entire large intestine. He came out of the hospital without his intestine, but with an MRSA superbug infection.
Oof.
So, yep, MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, and that's the stuff that eats your flesh. So what that means is he had a 10-inch incision down his midline, and when they pulled the bandages back every day, there were holes in that incision, and they were getting deeper by the day. So instead of the incision healing and closing, these little angry red mouths were appearing in the wound, and they were getting deeper. So the nurse was measuring these things with a probe, and she put them against the ruler. She called in the doctor. The doctor came, because in this country they actually come to your house, which is great. He came and he had a look, and he said, I haven't had any experience with anything. And all the blood drained out of his face, and he packed his bag and he left. He ran out of my living room, got in his car, and drove away.
Thanks, dude.
I thought, okay, right. And then the nurse packed up and left, and we were alone. Now, in this country, I don't know how it is there. Excuse me. If you have MRSA, they will not let you into the hospital because it spreads. So I thought, can't go back into the hospital, and that's where he caught it in the first place. The doctor can't help us. The nurse can't help us. So what happens? Does he die on my sofa? You know, like, where is he going to go? Where am I going to take him? And more importantly, where am I going to get help if there are no antibiotics that work against this superbug?
And the doctor and the nurse fled the scene. That's unbelievable.
They left. Yeah. They left. Unbelievable. I was just stunned. So I thought, right, okay, the day, I don't know a lot, but I know that the day that that infection hits his vital organs, we're done here. So I thought, you know what? I have not come this far and worked this hard and found this lovely man. At the age of 41, I was 41 when we met. I have not come this far to have it end like this. This is not how my happy ending ends, and I am not going to let this happen, not on my watch. So I started doing some research. I'm not a doctor and I'm not a scientist, but I am a girl who can research. So I started researching. And you know the thing that I noticed about all of the literature that I was reading? The language was so aggressive. It was all about fighting the bacteria and killing the germ and battling the bacteria. It was all warfare language, all of it. And I thought, you know what? If I'm not liking the answer that I'm getting to the question, and if the question is, how can I kill the infection? And the answer is, I can't. He will die. And I wasn't happy with that. So I thought, you know what I need to do? I need to ask a different question.
Good for you.
I need to ask a better question. So what's a better question? And I thought, you know what a better question is? It's how can I resolve the MRSA? How can I bring the MRSA into harmony? Not how can I kill it, but how can I bring it into harmony? MRSA is on your skin right now. It's on my skin. It's on everyone's skin. It's on our skin all the time. The problem is when it gets out of balance. That's when you have a problem. It's a little bit like, you know, Yellowstone, right? Yellowstone National Park.
Sure.
And you know that back in 1872, when they opened the park, they killed off all the wolves because wolves are predators and they didn't want them there. And by 1926, every single wolf was dead. No more wolves. The problem with that is that once the wolves were gone, the elk population went berserk and started grazing down all the willow trees. And once the willow trees were gone, there was nothing for the beaver to use to build their dams. So the beaver died out. And once the beaver died out, there were no nice still pools for the fish. So the fish died. And the birds that ate the fish died. And the plants that grew from the seeds that were spread by the birds died. And Yellowstone began to turn into a desert.
Oops.
Oops. Didn't think this through. So they tried to cull, the human beings tried to cull the elk, but it didn't work. And then in 1995, and you may know this story, they brought the wolves back into Yellowstone. And it was very controversial, but the wolves started culling the elk, and the elk stopped overgrazing the willow, and the willow came back, and the beaver came back, and the fish came back, and the birds came back, and the seeds and the plants came back, and Yellowstone rebloomed. So that is the metaphor of what actually happens when you start wiping things out with powerful antibiotics like the ones you find in the hospital. And that's where MRSA comes from. MRSA is like the elk. They're not bad. Elk aren't bad. But when they get out of control, then they're all over your body. Then they were all over Rich's body. They had replaced all the normal skin cells. They were under his fingernails. They were in his eyebrows, behind his ear, not just in the wound. They were everywhere. So I thought, how can I bring this back into balance? And the only thing I knew that could do that was the kefir. The kefir that we were making I knew that it worked by putting the good bacteria back in the system, like putting the wolves back into Yellowstone, to bring it back into balance. And I thought, wow, I wonder if it might work the same way on the skin. And so I tried it. I didn't have anything to lose. Rich was starting to fade in and out of consciousness. He was very, very ill. And I came up with a combination of essential oils that I thought might knock the pathogen level back a little bit. And then I put the kefir on his skin. Now, I was not brave enough to put it directly on his wound, because I thought if that goes wrong, that's going to be my fault, and it'll be bad. I can't deal with that. Yeah. I can't. It's going to be bad. Yeah. So I wasn't that brave. But I put medical honey on his wound, and then I put the kefir everywhere else, all over his body. Washed him down with the essential oil, and then put the kefir on his skin. I did that. I did it 3 times a day for 3 days, and he got sicker and sicker, and the holes got deeper. And then on the 4th day, he's looking at me, by the way, when he's conscious, going, "What are you doing?" I said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I've got it all under control."
I've got this.
I totally did. I was like, "I got this." Yeah, totally did. No idea what I was doing. On the 4th day, the nurse came in, pulled back the bandage, and those holes looked a little less deep. And I looked at her, she looked at me, it was like, we didn't say anything. Next day, definitely not as deep. She measured, yep, okay. So after that, the holes started to dry up and disappear like puddles in the sun. And within 2 weeks, she swabbed him, and he was completely clear of MRSA.
Wow.
His wound healed up, and he got back on his tractor. And he's been healthy to this day.
Wow. So you applied it all around his body, from head to toe, on the skin, to restore the colonies on the skin level of the good guys, the wolves, if you will. And then eventually, what we're assuming is then it started to kind of cross-thatch over and come over into the wound area.
Right. And because it was so crazy, when the dust settled and we were sure that he was okay, I sent everything off to the lab to have it tested. I sent off the essential oils to have it tested, and sure enough, they're effective against MRSA. So that's one powerful thing we've got going for us. And I sent off the kefir, again, to have it looked at. So, how does this work? And we found it does work on skin. You can powder it, you can freeze it, you can dry it in the oven, and it still works. Because the bacteria, it's not only the living bacteria, but they also produce metabolites. And so it's what the bacteria are producing it's also effective. Mm-hmm. But what I learned, the most important thing for me, besides having my husband still alive, was you can use kefir on the skin. The skin biome is just as active as the gut biome. We're a constellation of bacteria. You have as many bacteria inside your gut as there are stars in the observable universe. So really, you are like Yellowstone. You are an area of outstanding natural beauty, and you are a delicate and fragile ecosystem that needs to be kept in balance. And the things that destroy that ecosystem: sugar, antibiotics, stress, and environmental toxins. Yep. And those are the things that are absolutely wiping out our internal microbiomes. And that is mapping onto our skin. Yep. So we've got an epidemic of eczema. I think in the past 4 years, there's been like a 40% increase. An epidemic of adult acne, 200% increase over the last couple of years. Psoriasis, rosacea, and the doctors don't have anything for these. They give you antibiotics, they give you steroid creams. those things do not work. And the reason for that is eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, and acne are not skin conditions. They are gut disorders.
Right.
They are evidence of damage to your microbiome. And if you want to heal the skin, you got to heal the gut. And so what we started doing was giving people kefir to drink. And then I learned to put the kefir into lotions, which is a little easier and smelled better than what I was putting straight onto Rich's skin. And you put it on the skin. So the combination of drinking it and applying it to the skin at the same time works amazing results on eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, and acne.
You know what's funny is you got me thinking, when I grew up, there was this thing that my parents would have, and my mom, there would be this lava rock that they would use. So I'm Persian, right? So they'd have this lava rock where they would use to kind of exfoliate the skin. And then there was this other like clumpy rock that was just this dried yogurt that then they would, after exfoliating, rub all over their skin. And I just remember growing up going, that's weird. Why don't you just use soap? What the hell's wrong with you people, right? And now you look back at, like, you know, the Bulgarian, the Bulgarian wisdom that came down from the Caucasus Mountains, and that's, you know, that's kind of where I'm from. And it's just like, holy crap, that was like the elixir of life, and it just got kind of lost in the shopping cart of triclosan here in the modern world. So, quick question before I drop this one. What combo of essential oils were you using? Because that's also very interesting.
I can't tell you the recipe because it's a trade secret.
Aha. So is that something, is something, so it's commercially available though?
It is.
Great.
Yes.
Okay.
We sell it on our website.
Okay, cool. Fair enough. Fair enough. So you sell that, and then, okay, so you're in the UK. Can I get some yogurt, kefir, skincare stuff here in the States? Like, do you have products here?
We do ship our skincare to the U.S. We don't ship the liquid kefir.
Yeah.
But you've got good sources of kefir near you. As long as it's goat kefir made with real grains and unflavored, you should be good. So we do have a lot of customers. We've actually got 30,000 customers now in 28 countries, and we have a lot of people in the States. And they order our skincare because I'm, as far as I know, the only person making kefir lotions and kefir cleansers. You can drink kefir that you source locally and get your skincare from us if you like.
Yeah, cool, great. I mean, that's, to me, you know, I had multiple medical clinics. I've had dermatologists working for me. I've been in that arena, and I couldn't really stomach it because it was all about do what you want and I'll laser it off, do what you want and I'll, you know, nip tuck and all this kind of crap. And it just got to the point where I wasn't able to digest what was happening there because it was all kind of Band-Aid medicine, and so I walked away from a lot. And so this to me is a much more holistic view of all of it. I'm sure, you know, there's skin conditions that are still not responsive, but for the majority of Americans and just Westerners who have destroyed or decimated their gut microbiota, it seems like an obvious first place to start.
Doesn't it? Once you get the concept, it makes so much sense. And when I tell people that, and the people who come here, when they come to the goat farm, let me tell you, they have been everywhere else first, right? They've been to every doctor, every consultant, they've used all the steroid creams, they've taken the antibiotics, which of course just make things worse, and now we understand why. They knock at my door when they're desperate. Yeah. And the results that we're getting are pretty astonishing because those conditions are autoimmune conditions. They just are. You know, and January 2015, the science came out to show that eczema is an autoimmune condition. And as you know, autoimmune sits in the gut. You know, your gut and your skin are linked because your gut and your skin are both barrier sites of your immune system. So your body's really smart, and logically enough, it sites the immune system at the areas where the outside meets the inside. And that's your skin. That's the first point of the immune system, your lungs, your sinuses, and your gut. So as I researched into it, I realized quite often people who have eczema will also have IBS, hay fever, food intolerances. And all these things seem to go together. We call that the allergic march, and it tends to progress. So you have eczema as a child, and then it goes away. People go, oh yeah, I used to have eczema, but now I'm better. But then the allergic march progresses onto hay fever and food allergies and IBS, and in your 40s, it turns into asthma. Yep. So the good news is you can arrest the allergic march at any point, and you can do it with kefir.
Wonderful.
If you start taking the kefir and put the good bugs back into your skin, you can actually halt that progress. And it's really important, especially if your child has eczema, that you get on top of it and stop it, because it does not go away. Just because the eczema flares and then disappears doesn't mean that you're done here, because you will just trundle down that allergic march and end up with asthma, which is where we don't want to end up.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of places we don't want to end up, and asthma is definitely on that list. There's for children. Do you have a recommendation for kids who would maybe not find the kefir as palatable, and it seems so obvious to get them on it?
Yes, kefir is safe from birth. You can give it straight away, but as you point out quite rightly, the challenge is how you get it down their neck.
Yep.
So I've got a 10-year-old son, and I've got a skeptical husband. He's still skeptical.
Yeah,
Can you believe that?
That blows my mind, by the way. Don't mind the fact that this saved my life. I'm still skeptical.
I know.
Yeah,
no, there's no
gratitude. Boys will be boys, dudes will be dudes. I just, it's always that way. I've had that problem in my healthcare career all along. Every guy that comes in says, my wife made me come here. I'm fine.
Yep. And quite right, too. That's how we keep him fly, right? Yeah, no, he hates all this, all my hippie stuff, as he calls it, right? So, yeah, I have skeptical people at home. So here's what I do. The only thing that's really safe to mix with kefir to make it taste better is stevia. Are you onto stevia?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. It's probably very common in California. It's been a long time since I've been back there now. It's very new here in the UK. People ask me about other kinds of sweeteners. Do not mix your kefir with honey. Honey is a natural antibiotic and will kill off the probiotics. Don't use maple syrup. Don't use agave. Please don't use agave. Those things are so high GI that it's going to wreck your microbiome just as badly as sugar. I use honey, and I use it for colds only, medical purposes. I don't use it every day as a sweetener. So you can blend it up with fruit, whole fruit, not fruit juice. So again, if you're going to try to nurture your microbiome, you want to stay really low GI, which means no juicing. Don't juice anything. You can blitz it, you can blend it so that you have the pulp. And the idea there is, if you think about your body as a fireplace and you're going to make a fire, if you just burn newspaper, it's going to flare really hot and burn really fast, and then whew, it's going to all die out. So that's what it's like when you're eating processed foods and things that are high GI, bread, rice, pasta, white potatoes, sugar, things like that.
Yep.
Now, what you want to not disrupt your microbiome is you want to burn wood in the fireplace, not newspaper. So you want food that's going to trickle sugar into your system over time. And that's things like oatmeal, lentils, chickpeas, quinoa, amaranth, millet. Again, you guys have a lot more of this going in the States than we have in the UK.
Yep.
People go, quinoa, what's that?
Yeah. Yeah, we're about 10 years ahead of most of America, and somewhere around there ahead of some parts of Europe, and so especially in California, forget about it. It's like it's everywhere. Hey, we're running out of time, and I want to make sure people can find you. The book is called The Good Skin Solution, and so where can people get this? I invite my audience to actually get the skin care and start using it. If you have eczema, I want to hear back from you and let me know. Like, I'm going to get this stuff and I'm going to apply it. I'm going to get my kids on it for sure. But I just want to but I don't have any skin conditions, so I really want to see how this works. What's a website that we can share with my audience?
It's chucklinggoat.co.uk.
Okay, and I'll post it in there. Man, this, I love these kinds of stories, like this return to Eden type of story with this strain of kefir that's ancient, that's now healing us in all these modern conditions, and it's really great. So Shann, thank you. Thanks for finding this. Thanks for being persistent and saving your husband's life. Looks like you found some really juicy stuff that came out of that experience, and thank God he's all right.
What I found, nature has the answers. The answers were there all the time. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Amen. Thank you. Let me know what you think. Try the skincare. Let me know how it works for you. I'm going to do an experiment myself, and let's compare. I'll see you in the next show.